Thank you for joining us this afternoon. As part of the search of the shared dream, the Bay Area Jewish community is partnering with Israelis in building a shared society in Israel. My name is Barak Loozon. I'm the Israel Office Director for the San Francisco Bay Jewish Community Federation and Endowment Fund. I was born and raised in Israel, but spent the summer of '91 at Camp Swig, not far from here, as a young tzofeh, as a young scout. And as Gidi said, really, like I came here, like an Israeli who knows everything about Israel, but figure out, actually nothing about Judaism and what Jewish life might be. So came back a Jew, really. For me, it was a formative experience that influenced my path in my future. And in my role today, I am standing on this bridge between the two communities, the Bay Area Jewish community and the Israeli community, who are both going through quite dramatic changes. And with my friends and partners and colleagues, we think of ways to bring these two communities together, as both communities are now authoring their next chapters. Authoring the next chapter of Zionism and of Jewish life outside of Israel requires facing the fast-changing realities, engaging in adaptation processes, and the belief that this is not just a covenant of fate, brit goal, but rather it's a covenant of destiny. We're destined to be together. Today we have the opportunity to hear from three leaders who are not only committed to serve their own communities in Israel and within the American Jewish community, but rather to work forcefully for the greater common good. Slepian, who will facilitate the conversation, Sigal Kantopsky, and Elisheva Mazya, will share their work they do, their aspirations, and the challenges they face. The relationship between the three, these three people on the stage today goes a few years back, under the Federation's mission to strengthen Israel as a pluralistic and democratic society with equal opportunities for all its citizens. Slepian, now in his role as the Federation Chair of the Israel Committee, oversees the programs we support in Israel and is deeply involved in finding ways to support their work on the ground. Elisheva and Sigal are both CEOs of organizations who have been Federation's partners and grantees for many years, New Spirit and Olim Beyachad. They both were also Gvanim Fellows, the Federation's initiative to promote Jewish pluralism in Israel. In the session today, we will be focusing on the changes that are going on in the Israeli society and the potential work that can be done by both communities to address them. The new makeup of Israel, of the Israeli society, with the challenges and opportunities embedded in, is very well articulated in this short videography coming from the President of of Israel, President Ruby Rivlin. President Rivlin has set at the top of his agenda the need to build bridges between the different groups that make up the Israeli society. Let's take a few minutes to see this videography, and then we will introduce our guests and mentors.
החברה הישראלית משנה את פניה. אין מדובר בשינוי של מה בכך, אלא בבחירות שיעצרו מחדש את הזהות שלנו כישראלים וישפיעו עמוקות על הדרך בה אנחנו יכולים להבין את עצמנו וגם את הבית הלאומי שלנו. הסדר הישראלי החדש איננו נבואת זעם עתידנית, זוהי מציאות המשתקפת לנגד עינינו. ראו הרכב כיתות א' במערכת החינוך הישראלית. בשנות ה-90 החברה הישראלית הייתה חברה בנויה ברוב ברור ומוצק שלצידו קיימים מיעוטים. רוב ממלכתי גדול שלצידו שלושה מיעוטים. ציבור דתי-לאומי, מיעוט ערבי ומיעוט חרדי. כיתות א' היום מורכבות לכ-38% חילונים, כ-15% דתיים-לאומיים, כרבע ערבים וקרוב לרבע חרדים. התהליכים הדמוגרפיים המעצבים מחדש את פניה של החברה הישראלית יצרו למעשה סדר ישראלי חדש. סדר שבו אין עוד רוב ברור ואין גם מיעוטים ברורים. סדר אולי שבו החברה הישראלית מורכבת מארבעה מגזרים. ואם נרצה ארבעה שופטים מרכזיים שונים במהותם אלה מאלה שילכו ויתקרבו זה לזה בגודלם. החלוקה החמורה הזאת של החברה הישראלית מתבטאת בראש ובראשונה בחלוקה לארבעה זרמי חינוך שונים ונפרדים בתכלית. ילד מבית אל, ילד מרהט, ילד מהרצליה לא רק שהם לא נפגשים, אלא הם גם מתחנכים לתפיסה שונה בתכלית לגבי ערכי היסוד ואופייה הרצוי של מדינת ישראל. האם תהיה זאת מדינה חילונית וליברלית, יהודית ודמוקרטית? האם תהיה זאת מדינת הלכה יהודית או דמוקרטיה הלכתית? האם תהיה זאת מדינת כל אזרחיה או לאומיה? שבט, באופן דומה לכל שבט ודוגמת השבט התקשורתית שלו, העיתונים אותם הוא קורא, ערוצי הטלוויזיה בהם הוא צופה. כך לכל שבט גם ערים משלו, תל אביב, אום אל-פחם, אפרת ובני ברק. הסדר הישראלי החדש הוא מציאות בעלת השלכות מרחיקות לכת על החוסן הלאומי של מדינת ישראל, על העתיד של כולנו. כדי ליצור תקווה מוכרחים להכיר את העובדות. הדחקה או מאבק לא יעיל. כולנו, חרדים וחילונים, דתיים וערבים. כאן, כולנו כאן כדי להישאר כאן. ועלינו להבין איך אנו עושים את זה יחד. אם חפצי חיים אנחנו, אם חזון המדינה היהודית והדמוקרטית הוא חלום חיינו ומשאת נפשנו, הרי שאנו נדרשים היום להישיר מבט למציאות הזאת. וזאת, מתוך מחויבות עמוקה למצוא יחד תשובות לשאלות, מתוך נכונות לסרטט יחד כל שבטי ישראל חזון משותף של תקווה ישראלית. הסדר הישראלי החדש דורש מאיתנו היום לעבור מהתפיסה המקובלת של רוב ומיעוט לתפיסה חדשה של שותפות בין המגזרים השונים בחברה הישראלית. ישנם 4 יסודות שעליהם השותפות הזאת מוכרחה לעמוד. הראשון הוא בתחושת הביטחון של כל מגזר, בכך שהכניסה לשותפות הזאת אינה כרוכה בוויתור על מרכיבי היסוד של זהותו. החרדי, החילוני, הדתי או הערבי אינם יכולים להרגיש שציפור נפשם נמצאת בסכנה או תחת איום כלשהו. היסוד השני הוא האחריות המשותפת. כאשר אף שבט אינו מיעוט, אף צד לא יוכל להימלט מנשיאה באחריות לגורלה ועתידה של מדינת ישראל וכלל החברה בישראל. היסוד השלישי הוא הוגנות ושוויון. כדי להבטיח את השותפות בינינו, יהיה עלינו להבטיח שאף אזרח אינו מופלה לרעה או לטובה מתוקף השתייכותו המגזרית. כן, והיסוד הרביעי והמאתגר לכולם הוא יצירת הישראליות המשותפת. הפסיפס הישראלי המתהווה איננו גזירה, אלא הזדמנות אדירה. הזדמנות הטומנת בחובה עושר תרבותי, השראה, אנושיות ורגישות. אם נאמין שלא נגזר עלינו, אלא נועדנו לחיות יחד, נוכל האתגר. יהיה עלינו להבין כיצד נראה חינוך בשותפות להינתן מערכות חינוך נפרדות. כיצד מנהלים משק ומגזר ציבורי שמצטיינים בכיוון תעסוקתי. כיצד נראה תקשורת שמצליחה לשמש גם כפלטפורמה משותפת. אקדמיה שאינה מתפשרת על איכות, אבל יודעת לייצר סביבה תרבותית רגישה. פוליטיקה ושיח פוליטי שמביאים בחשבון את הרגישויות והיסודות של השותפות. ביסוסה של השותפות הזאת היא משימה אדירה. אני עומד כאן בפניכם מתוך תחושה עמוקה שהחברה הישראלית זקוקה היום לקריאת השכמה. אני קורא היום לכולכם, התגייסו יחד איתי לאתגר. רק כך, יחד ובשותפות נוכל לחדש תקווה ישראלית.
Israeli Hope by the President of Israel. I want to introduce to you Arthur Slepian. He's the founder and the executive director of a Wider Bridge, a pro-Israel organization that works to deepen the connection between the LGBT communities of Israel and North America. The Wider Bridge was founded in 2010 and staff in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, and it brings its programs to cities across North America. There are more on Arthur in the binders, but I would like to also kind of briefly introduce Elisheva and Sigal. Elisheva Mazya serves as the CEO of the Jerusalem-based non-profit organization, New Spirit, which works to keep creative young adults in Jerusalem in order to help Israel's capital be a thriving and pluralistic city. She helped found New Spirit while a student at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and done many more things. Elisheva publishes columns for the Yediot Achronot newspaper, if you happen to see. Sigal Kantopsky is the executive director of Olim Beyachad, an organization working towards the successful integration of Ethiopian Israelis into the mainstream society. Prior to that, she served as the organization's Director of Development and Deputy Director. She served also as a Jewish agency representative on numerous short-term assignments abroad, visiting Jewish congregations all over the world. I'm really happy that you guys are here with us and for the opportunity to hear from the shetach, from the ground. So I'm going to take this out and we'll invite you guys to bring your chairs here.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, as Barak mentioned, I'm here with two hats on. I'm the executive director of a wider bridge that works to build connections between the LGBT communities of Israel and North America. And I'm also on the board of the Federation and the chair of our Israel committee. So, I want to talk a little bit about both of those things. I'll start with a wider bridge. And we have, I think maybe the best way to describe what we do is that we have a motto or a slogan that tries to encompass what our objectives are, and that slogan is equality in Israel, equality for Israel. And I want to talk about each of those two pieces. When we say equality in Israel, we mean that our dream for Israel, our shared vision of what Zionism is about, is one that is about diversity and inclusion. We imagine an Israel where we as LGBT people in the United States, Jews or non-Jews, can come to Israel and feel like we are truly a part of the fabric of the society. And I think one... Direct challenge to President. Sorry. My podcast app seems to go off on its own. I think one of the interesting aspects of this work with the LGBT community is that while it might seem like it's kind of a small niche, in fact, one aspect of it is that it runs across all four of the tribes that we saw here. Every community in Israel, every tribe, every sub-tribe has some representation of LGBT people. And so when we bring missions of LGBT leaders from North America to Israel, we meet with secular Israeli leaders, we meet with religious LGBT leaders, we meet with Ethiopian LGBT leaders, we meet with Arab LGBT leaders, and sometimes we even meet with Haredi or former Haredi people who are in the LGBT community. So this is an identity that, in fact, when the president said that these four tribes never meet, well, at Jerusalem Open House or in some gay bars, they in fact do meet. There's one of the few areas in which the tribes come together is in the intersection of the LGBT community. And we meet with LGBT groups and leaders not only in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, but in Beyachad and Kiryat Shmona and Afula. There is LGBT life all over the country. So in a way, as we take people to Israel and help them see the country through this, what seems like this very specific lens, we really are also in a sense showing them the entire country. And we do it in a way that, as I say, I think most people in North America, if they have an image of LGBT life in Israel, if they have any image at all, it's maybe this image that there are handsome young guys on the beach in Tel Aviv. And in fact, there are handsome young guys on the beach in Tel Aviv, gay and straight. But it's our goal to really show people the whole fabric of the rainbow. And it's way more than that, and it's way more beautiful than that. And so, just as one example, just a few months ago, we brought to the U.S. the leaders of an organization called Kala, which is the organization that has just developed in the last couple of years for the Ethiopian LGBT community in Israel. And we brought them to 6 cities around the country and to meet with Jewish leaders and people of color, and to tell their really fascinating story about what it's like to be in Israel. So that's equality for Israel, equality in Israel. Equality for Israel, that we want Israel to be treated fairly in the global LGBT community, in the community of nations in general. We're not a political lobbying organization. We're not the gay AIPAC or the gay J Street. that we're happy to work with both of those groups because they both have strong constituents of LGBT people. But we are political in the sense that we support Israel's right to exist as a Jewish and democratic state, and we oppose the movement for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. When we started a wider bridge 6 years ago, the only organizations in the community in the country that were LGBT and talked about Israel were groups that had names like LGBT, Queers United Against Israeli Apartheid, or Queers United Against Israeli Terrorism. And we wanted to be an alternate voice. And we wanted to present a more positive view of Israel and to help make the concept of Zionism more relevant and more meaningful for our community here today. As you might imagine, the LGBT community in North America, and particularly here in the Bay Area, leans to the left. That's very understandable. And so do we lean to the left when it comes to issues like equal rights and marriage equality and opposing racism. But we also refuse to be defensive or tentative or embarrassed about our care and concern for Israel. We want to support people on the ground, like people who are going to be here in a few minutes, who are working to make Israel a better place. But it doesn't diminish the love and the pride that we feel for the Israel that exists today. And I think that sentence, that we want to make Israel a better place, but we have this great pride in Israel that exists today, is also true about the work that we do in Federation. And I want to say a little bit about that. I want to kind of switch gears and say a little bit about that. Because we here in the San Francisco Federation, we do our work in Israel a little bit differently than most other federations around the country. And one is that most federations just simply send a few big grants to organizations like the Joint Development Committee or Jaffe or ORT, and they let those folks do the work. And we have a different philosophy. We have staff on the ground in Israel led by Barak, and we want to be in a much more personal relationship with the organizations that we are supporting. And we also think it's important for us to be developing the most talented leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators in Israeli society that are working for change. And so that's why we choose to we have a large portfolio of grantees, and we choose to have a much more intimate relationship with them and to be much more involved with their work, and also to bring their stories back to our community. And so we have two amazing examples of that here today with Elisheva and Sigal. And so now I'm going to have a little conversation with them, and then we'll open it up for questions. So, just first of all, you're both doing such amazing work, and it's been such a privilege for me to get to know you and your work over the last few years. So I'm hoping that you could just each take a little bit of time to talk about your own journey toward activism and social entrepreneurship and what it is that your own organizations do. Sure, please.
So hi everyone, my name is Elisheva. I was born and raised in Nahal, it's a small shop in the Israeli Valley in the north of Israel, which I'm very proud of. And my personal story starts actually in the States. My grandmother was American, and then about 90, it's exactly 94 years ago, she heard a lecture of someone from the Zionistic movement that came to the States to recruit people. And she came back home, said to her husband, I'm leaving you, I'm taking our two small kids, and I'm moving to Israel, and you're staying here. I think she wanted to divorce anyway, but she's just used it as an excuse. And she came right to Nahal, and it was almost a year after the Moshav was founded, but she considered as one of the founders, but it was still like in the beginning of the Zionistic movement and establishment of Nahal, and it was a crazy decision to come from the wealthy, comfortable estates to dry swamps in Israel. And I think she was looking for exciting challenges. And to some extent, I think, because my parents has nothing to do with social activism, I think this is kind of what I took in my genes. And 13 years ago, I decided to move to Jerusalem to be a student, and it was a very weird decision. First of all, because again, Nahal was today is a very comfortable place to live in it. but also because it was right after the Second Intifada and Jerusalem was a very dangerous place to live in it. But also because the population in Jerusalem then is very diverse. It's exactly what Ruben speaks about. And it was a very uncommon decision for someone that grew up in a very classic Jewish secular home. And I decided to do that because I was excited by the diversity. And I think, I'll speak about it in a minute, but so I moved to be a student, and then I met a few friends in university, and we were all very much worried about both the future of Jerusalem, but also the future of Israel. And we said, we want to do something generation-wide. We established New Spirit, the non-for-profit organization, building communities of young people, but we want them eventually to stay in Jerusalem, because the average young Jerusalemite would most likely move to Tel Aviv. As Ruben said, this is the Jewish secular tribe city. And this whole community of young people that we work with are the engine for economic growth in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is facing a huge brain drain of young people. So over the past 13 years, we engaged more than 3,000 young people in a number of programs and communities that eventually get those people to not just live in the city and create in the city, but also be involved. And what drives me is exactly what Ruby Rivlin spoke about. So when I see the data about where Israel used to be, where Israel is heading, all I think about is that we have three ways of see that, because I'm dealing with those numbers for a few years now, and every time I tell my Tel Aviv friends or my high school friends the data, they are shocked, because a lot of the people still feels like we're 30 years ago in a Jewish secular country with three minorities. But the fact is that Israel is changing, and we just keep ignoring it. And as I see it, there are three ways to treat it. One is to say, and there are many people that say, I don't want to live in a country like that. And I think that the number one reason why people leave Israel is not because of the economy. I think it's because of that. They feel they don't want to live in a country like that. The second thing that you can do is to say, well, I'm terrified by that, but I don't want to leave Israel. I want to speak Hebrew. I want to stay with my family. So you go to live in your tribe city. And this is exactly what he mentioned. If you're Jewish secular, you would go to Tel Aviv. And if you're Haredi, you would go to Hebron. And I think what we invented in Jerusalem is the third option, is to actually deal with that and be excited by this challenge, as my grandmother was excited by Israel challenge, and to develop creative solutions for this issue. And this is why I chose to live in Jerusalem, because Jerusalem kind of predicts the future of Israel. Current demography in Jerusalem is pretty much what we'll have in Israel in 10, 15 years from now. And this is why we made a big decision, and I'll finish with that. So New Spirit for 10 years worked mainly with secular and modern Orthodox young people, because we felt this is what will drive the economy. And, this is the people that go to university and they pay taxes and everything. And in many ways, we felt like it's a zero-sum game. So if we'll attract more secular people to Jerusalem, we'll be able to fight the ultra-Orthodox and Arab populations that are getting big. And then about 2 years ago, we built our next 5-year strategy, and we all kind of started a huge shift in how we see that. And personally, that we understand today that the Arab and ultra-Orthodox communities in Jerusalem, first of all, they have a big a big part of people who are young, creative, dynamic, go to restaurants, coffee shops, bars, and everything. But more of that, we really think that this is the only way to, as I said, really develop creative solutions for the fact that we live in the same city. And it became a big part of my organization's mission. So in the past year and a half, we started to work a lot with ultra-Orthodox, a little bit with Arabs, because it's much more difficult. But we engaged more than 100 ultra-Orthodox in the past year in different programs in the communities. And I think it's very exciting, because what we see in Jerusalem is very slow, but you see it. It's a shift for how people think about the fact that they live in a diverse city, in a diverse country. And I'm very optimistic about it.
Should we? Good afternoon. My name is Sigal Kantopsky. I'm married and man of 4. Live in Tzofim, from Kfar in Israel. My motivation to be involved with social activism is start 40 years ago in my village in Ethiopia where I was born. I understood that I think 2 years ago when I took my daughter Shachar to 2 years ago she celebrated her bat mitzvah, and I decided to her bat mitzvah to take her to a road trip to Ethiopia. And these 2 weeks that we traveled there, we had the opportunity to village in my parents' village, the village that I was born in. And from the closest city to this village, we drove 4 hours. And we get into this village, beautiful village, located in a beautiful area, surrounded in the volcanic mountains. And I stand there with my daughter, and while in front of us, the river that all my childhood story are based on. And look at this beautiful place, and many questions that come up to my mind. Why my parents live this beautiful life, nature life, and start journey that no one promised them that they will finish at the end, that everything will be okay on this journey. How they could danger my life, my civil life, and start this journey. And also as a parent, I was there with my daughter, and I couldn't understand how my parents took this responsibility as a parent, endangered their children's life, and start way that, as I said before, no one promised them that everybody will be okay. And I think 2 weeks after when we back to Israel, I asked my mother these questions, and how they could danger my life, my siblings' life, and why did they live this beautiful life? They were rich people there, they weren't poor people, and and how they could from this remote village in northwest Ethiopia could dream about Jerusalem and start this way. And by very simple answer of my mother, I understood why I'm doing what I'm doing today. She said, what kind of question is that? She said, we live for Jerusalem. Our life mission and goal was Jerusalem. So when we heard that there's a way to Jerusalem, so it wasn't a question of if we'll do that. It was a question of how we're going to do that. And I think in this very simple question answer, I understood why I'm so involved with all my life in civil activism and to make Israel a better life for everybody. And in a way also to tell the right narrative, the right story of Ethiopian Jews in Israel, to say those people that they were like visionary, like Herzl and others. They had this dream to bring their family to Jerusalem, and no one promised. They choose to live their life and their safe zone and to come to Jerusalem and to Israel. And I think in a way what we are doing today in Olim Beyachad is to tell the right story, the right narrative of the Ethiopian community in Israel. To say Olim Beyachad exists 10 years, working one side with the Ethiopian youngers, university students and graduates to help them to suitable job in the Israeli market, give them the tools that any other Israeli has through their parents or friends of their parents, and give them this equal opportunity to find their way in the Israeli market and society, but at the same time to work with the employers and volunteers and the people that leading the Israeli society and the Israeli market, and to open up their eyes and to make from close face to face these Ethiopian Israeli excellence, ambitions, youngers, and through them to be exposed to the Ethiopian Israeli part in Israel. And in our work, our statement, very clear statement to say we came to address problem of the Israeli society, not problem of the Ethiopian community. Because I think all of us know that if in a normal way, no one of those Ethiopian younger would needed this help, special organization to find suitable job, if he or she could find this opportunity. And 10 years that we are existing, working with thousands of Ethiopian university students, graduates that are working and they are in the forefront of the Israeli market, and with thousands of employers that were partners with us and working with us, and they're our partners. They're not, some of them are working at Olim Beyachad without salary, and I think this is like what to see my children and to see this partners give me the hope that something will be better in a few years in Israel.
Thank you. So I want to talk with each of you a little bit about Zionism. Elisheva, you're working to make change in a very complicated place in Jerusalem, in a city that everybody has an opinion about. And the people say that the Zionists of old were milking cows and draining swamps, and the new Zionists are building communities. But what does it mean to be a Zionist in Jerusalem today?
So I believe that in general, what happened in Israel when, again, 94 or 100 years ago, people came and there was nothing, and we needed to build the infrastructure, the roads, the buildings, to dry the swamps, to do the physical thing. And it sounds like a hard task, but the fact is that I think that our contemporary task is much more complicated and difficult than it used to be 100 years ago. So in my theory, people were very much focusing on building stuff, so nobody really invested time and energy in thinking about how to build a society. Where, on the other way, I think what happened in the States is fascinating because the Jewish community here didn't need to dry any swamps. So the Jewish community really invested time and energy to build a real society. This is why the whole system of Jewish federations, the GCCs, and Jewish communities is amazing. And we don't have something like that in Israel. And I think what happened that on the last 20 years, we finally realized that somebody needs to build a society in Israel, especially because Israel becomes more and more diverse. And when we were all looking pretty much the same, with the three minorities, but most of Israel looks pretty much the same, it was pretty easy to live in the same country. But I think that our current challenge is to really take different populations and turn them into society. And this is what it means to build a more cohesive or diverse communities. And I think that really this is like the number one task of the Zionistic movement at our times. And by the way, this is why I'm in Jerusalem, because I really feel like I live in the forefront of the Zionistic movement and the Zionistic needs and tasks. And I think that our main goal for the next few decades is to really allow those very different people to feel part of the same home and the same society. And I think this is part of what Herzl meant when he spoke about Israel, focusing too much on buildings.
Thank you. So, Sigal, first of all, I want to take an opportunity to share a little story, just because, as I mentioned, back in April, I had the opportunity to travel around the country with 3 young leaders from this group called Kala, which is for LGBT Ethiopians, and they were all born in Israel, in their 20s, and they talked about some of the persecution and oppression, some of the problems that the Ethiopian community is having in Israel. But they also said, we are so grateful that our parents and grandparents had the courage to make the journey, and that they gave us a challenge. And they gave us the challenge to make Israel better. It's not they did their job to get us there, and now it's our job to make the place better. But I want to ask you that a lot of the challenges that your community faces in Israel seem similar to some of what the African American community experiences here, whether it's discrimination, segregation, unfair treatment by the police, etc. There have been major protests in Israel, a lot of that last year. And in this country, it has sparked a very interesting conversation about patriotism, and even including symbolic things like should people who feel oppressed stand or sit for the national anthem. And I guess Zionism is in a way sort of an expression of Israeli patriotism. So I guess my question for you is, either for you personally or if you want to speak for some more of your community, what does Zionism mean for you when you hear Hatikva? How does your community see itself in the hope of that song?
So, as you understood from me, from the first question, I think in a way there are similar things between the African American situation and Ethiopian Israel, but a huge difference. Because the Ethiopian Israeli choose to come to Israel. They came to Israel because it's their home, okay? They're there to stay. We're not going anywhere. So, and for us, Israel is the only language, country, and Hebrew is the only language, so we don't have other place. So even it's so difficult, and there's challenges that we are facing and going through for the last 30 years in Israel, I think Zionism, by my eyes, to stay there, say we are here, although all these challenges, okay, and to say in a way, if Zionism 50 years ago was kibbutzim and build bridges, today Zionism, I think that the civil society organization replaced the kibbutzim place, and but the Ethiopian Israeli community in Israel today, although all difficulties we are going through, Israel is the only place, and they stand at the anthem and respect the country, and they, it's there. We're not, we're not looking for other place to go because, there is a segregation issues in Israel. We say, okay, we'll stay here and we'll make this place better for our kids. And we're working this way where I'm doing what I'm doing in Olim Beyachad and other kids and those kids that you met. To say we want our kids and other kids in Israel growing in a healthy society and a healthy environment. So in order to be in this place, we should work today and not to wait and say the time will do, itself and we will better another 50 years. And also regarding the Ethiopian community in Israel, I think the color is the issue. Okay, and if the color is the issue, the color will be staying another 100 years. So, and the color is obstacles by the non-Ethiopian Israeli. I think this is one of the characteristics that we are judging by Ethiopian Israeli. So let's work on it and change the misperception or the way that the public in Israel seeing and judging Ethiopian Israeli. And I think so. It's in a way it's working on both sides of the coin all the time. One side to help these younger Ethiopian Israelis, the majority was born here, and help them to feel at home. But on the other side, to work with the Israeli society, non-Ethiopian side, to say, hey, we are not doing a favor to get them to integrate the Israeli society. They're a place like you, and to change the misperception that exists related to the Ethiopian community.
Thank you. So I feel like we definitely have reached 3.0 in our discussion of Zionism here. Why don't we see if there are questions from all of you?
I think I'm curious about a larger question that I would love your wisdom on, which is, we know it's not just the 4 tribes. We know that Ethiopians or Yemeni or other groups are kind of separate and so forth. We know that when my sons were in the Israeli Defense Forces, and as we talked about, they would take their friends from Ethiopia to a bar who also served in the Israeli army. And some bars refused to allow them to come in. Some racism is very present. We know one of my sons who graduated from Harvard, who was a student at Harvard, all the Israelis were welcome to take a boat ride. And they came with one of their friends, an Israeli Arab. He was not allowed to go on the boat, but everybody else was. So we know there are challenges. The question I have, and 2 of them actually, one is the national anthem as an example. Are there symbols that may have to be changed in a Israel 3.0, such as the national anthem? It's very controversial. But the other one is, what is the unifying story? Not just how bringing together, what's the unifying story that will make all these various groups want to stay in Israel, whether it's Jerusalem, whatever it is. But what's the unifying story now? Before it was survival, Holocaust, and so forth. What is it now that will keep all these diverse groups want to stay in Israel? That's what I'm curious about, so I'd love the answer.
Well, I'll be extremely optimistic or even naive. I really think, though I'm not religious at all, but I really believe in the notion of Olim. Like I know some people, my mother, what?
Light on to the
Oh,
nation.
sorry,
Or
no,
women.
it's a term I can say in Hebrew. My mother thinks it's a very racist thing to say, and very arrogant. But I really think that Israel's current challenges are something that America is facing, European countries are facing, and I really feel that our next big challenge is that. And this is why I think that we should all be excited to create this new narrative that means that we are stuck in the same country, but we don't want to just be keep on being segregated, but we want to be excited by the differences. And the reason I believe in it, because this is a change that happened to me. If you would ask me 5 years ago, I was very much focused on expanding the power of my tribe in Jerusalem. We did, so my tribe is the Jewish secular. My organization did a lot of cultural events on Shabbat in the city center, and we fought with everyone we can to, and I'm not doing that anymore, and I really changed what I'm doing, and it's not just because I want to be okay with everybody, it's because I really, I'm going every month on Thursday night to have Chilti Masharim it's like a fun night. And I have a lot of ultra-Orthodox friends, and this is today, like, a lot of people keep telling me, well, eventually you go back to Tel Aviv because this is, your place. And I keep telling them, and I really believe in it, it's not my home anymore. I'm not excited about living in I love San Francisco, and every time I hear it, I really love it. But I really don't feel at home here because I think it's not a reality. And I think the opportunity to live in a place with people that are really different from you is something that we can all be excited by. And I think that our new joint narrative should be to be excited by the other. And by the way, San Francisco is a good example to that. So I'm saying something opposite to what I just said, but I think it's both. And it's, so I hope more people in Israeli society would feel like our joint narrative is to teach the world how to live in this country.
I think today there is more awareness than 5 years ago about this like common life and to create this common good of everybody in Israel. As a religious person, I believe in to be Orlagoim, but I think we are not there. We have a lot, to do, and we will be considered today ourselves as a society to be Orlagoim. I mean, Alvai, but we are not there.
Wait, and your answer?
So, I guess I would say, I don't know if you heard Giddy Greenstein
I
talk
heard there's
earlier.
4 areas, and they're
Yeah.
going to the 4th one.
Right, though, I think, I guess, I'm not sure there will ever be one unifying narrative. I think what Giddy was saying was that the Jewish people have always had 4 stories, in a way, and that at different times and places, pieces of those stories, but the fact that all 4 stories exist is a part of why we actually still exist as a people 3,500 years from now, and so many other ethnic groups and religions and other kinds of people have disappeared from the face of the earth. But there's only one place, there's only one Israel, there's only one opportunity that we have for this manifestation of Jewish peoplehood to exist. And so I think that sort of all of these stories, they sort of require that we all commit ourselves to that project in one way or another, because there aren't going to be 4 Israels. It's only going to be one. And even those of us, I also think that it's important that there be a strong diaspora. I think another part of Giddy's book is that part of what has sustained the Jewish people and kept us in survival mode is that we have been spread out all over the world. And so even when all the Jews in Europe were killed, most of them, there still were a great many of us around to sort of help pick up the pieces. And so, but I don't think it's a requirement that we all make Aliyah. But I think it's a requirement that we all be in some significant relationship with this Jewish homeland.
So that would be for you, getting partnership among them, it sounds like to me.
Yes. Other questions?
So today's theme is the Zionism 3.0, and as we know, the majority of Israel are Mizrahim, which is color. And a lot of the times when we talk about Zionism, we talk about Ashkenazim and Zionism related to Ashkenazim. And we don't talk about the Mizrahi Zionism and what happened there and why did they leave Ethiopia, why did they leave Iraq for Yemen. And they have a lot of stories, and for some reason I feel like in education here in America and also in Israel, it's like Mizrahim are just wiped out completely in their story of Zionism and their history. So how do you think we can empower our government in America and in Israel to start education? I know that Viton has done like curriculum now, so it's just getting started, but how do you think we can talk about it? Because even here, when we talked about Zionism, I didn't hear one Mizrahi Zionist that they discussed. So that's just something that I wanted to point out. So you could say.
Yeah, I would also say, I think it's also part of what you just said is also part of the problem. And it's certainly also part of the problem on the left of how the left sees Israel, because there is this simplification of the story of Israel that is white European colonialists that are oppressing Palestinian people of color. And there's so much that's inaccurate about that story, but one of the main things that's inaccurate about that story is that more than half of Israel are themselves people of color, or probably even more of color than the Palestinian people in some ways. And so, until we integrate all of those stories into the true story of Zionism, it makes the story more, it opens that story up, makes it more vulnerable to these accusations about racism and oppression and other things that really, that really don't tell the full story of what the history of the people are.
I think also, kind of, the president referred to the tribes as like 4 tribes, but actually, as you mentioned before, of course, there are people are, feeling belong to sub-tribes or communities and so on. The reason, by the way, he did it is quite important, is because of the fact that we have 4 different public school systems in Israel. We have siloed public school systems. We have a public school system to each one of these tribes, of these streams. This is why I was kind of referring to it, because as you saw in the movie, he said it's not only that our kids are, that like we're raising our kids apart from each other, but actually each tribe, each school system educated to a different vision of Israel, different image of Israel and so on. So Mizrahi, I would say, kind of identity or identity. I'm sure, I guess because it sounds like you're kind of involved. It has become more and more vocal in the last few years, and I think that that's actually what's now happening in Israel. There are more voices out there on the public square. Like really, people are voicing out their own identities. It's kind of I feel like it's a process of kind of returning to who you are before you come to the public square and try to create a dialogue or build a cohesive society, but rather who you are, what's your heritage is, who are your parents, what was the village you came from, being proud of this village, really hearing the story of your mother, in order to come to the public square and talk to others. I think it's an amazing, interesting, and important, really important process that we're going through. But I think that another thing that's happening is that it's not only demography, it's also mindset. So the majority, I would say Ashkenazi, liberal, mostly secular, center of Israel. Okay, the majority still feels the majority, or in many cases the mindset is still of a majority when they interact, when they and the minorities, by the way, are still in a mindset of minority. It doesn't matter, for example, that the religious Zionists are now all over the leadership roles in the ministries, in the army, and so on. If you talk to them, they do not feel as the hegemony or the elite. Many of them are still in a mindset of minority. So what is required in order to create a sense that we're no longer a majority, we're no longer a minority, but rather kind of equal parts, or building partnerships. It's a painful, by the way, painful process for many. The Mizrahi movement, many of the Mizrahi activists were all about, kind of replacing the Ashkenazi elite and becoming the next elite. I personally don't think that'll be the new narrative of Israel. It shouldn't. But I do think that there is a role and voice for everybody to come up with new kind of partnerships.
So, your organization kind of deals with people who are different from throughout the society. Your organization kind of deals with these 4 categories sort of in the way that was defined in the little film that we saw, which is like these 4 categories defined by educational systems that are different. And yours is like a racial or sort of racially historic organization and dealing with it that way. And I mean, I think it's also sort of internationally, I mean, the LGBT discussion maybe in the United States is 10 years older or 20 years older than it is in Israel, but I grew up in Boston and nobody was gay in my high school, that's clear. And, I didn't even understand that world existed until later in my life. So this is not a conversation America's been having for 40 years either. Maybe we're 20 years ahead of Israel. If we are 20 years ahead of Israel, I feel like what's happening in the United States now is a backlash of like the white man who feels threatened. The majority, the Ashkenazi maybe in Israel. And I guess my question to you 3, because you are coming from different approaches to what you're trying to make equality or how you're trying to bring diversity. Are you anticipating that energy in Israel? Is it happening? Is there like an Ashkenazi backlash against this feeling that there's all these different voices and everybody wants a piece of the pie? Like, is that kind of is that manifesting itself in any way? Is that a conversation you anticipate? Are you trying to?
Absolutely, yes. I can say, I think my family is a very good example. We're a group of friends, so I can be not a PC. So my father is a 3rd generation in Halal. It's like the classic Jewish secular families. And my mother is she's a playwright in Israel, and she's
Very well known in Israel, very famous.
but she's a very extreme left wing. She doesn't consider herself a Zionist. Like, she really believes in. She doesn't understand why we need a Jewish country. She's like, and at several points, and my parents really proud of me that trying to deal with Israeli problems, but as parents, they don't understand what I'm doing. Like, why are you doing that? They still feel that, we, the Jewish secular people, we built the state of Israel, and now other groups are trying to ruin everything. They wouldn't tell it that way, but this is like the subtext of what they're saying from different perspectives. And it's and I'm not saying if they're right or not, but it is a discourse. They feel that, and the reason I mentioned that my mother is a playwright, because there was a big thing in Israel in the past year and a half. There was a new Ministry of Culture, and she's from the Likud party, and her agenda is about getting all this old elite out of the budgets for theater and dance companies and that stuff, and bring new culture, which is more Mizrahi, more religious culture, ultra-Orthodox culture, but mainly Mizrahi and like the new. And my mother feels, and like this new Ministry of Culture, she's, איך אומרים, באיזה מילה נשתמש ב...
Hard to describe. What are you trying to say?
במה, אבל how do they call it?
Yeah,
She's a character. She's not a.
she's out.
But the heart of what she's saying, I need to agree with her, because the demography in Israel is changing, and I really feel that it's a good thing that other communities that didn't used to deal and to have anything to do with culture are now rising. She's doing it in a very bad way, but the heart of what she's saying, I actually agree with her. And my mother thinks that it's disaster, that this is what I'm saying.
I think that's my point, is that your mother is like the person who has the power and feels the threat of sharing. I mean, sharing means that the person who has all the pie is now going to have less pie. And
it's not just this, it's not just that she feel threatened, she feels it's not right. And I have a lot of arguments with her because I'm saying, why should you be the only one that gets Israeli budgets for theater?
And so within your organization, like how are you, can you see that growing? And is there a way to shape that into the way that you're trying to get equality? Is there some way to engage that conversation better than I feel like we engage it here? Because there's a lot of anger growing here that I feel like nobody's really dealing with or
It's a lot
understanding.
on the very, very small, it's like, you find it in little details, and this is why I think there are no huge solutions. I think we need, the small issues. So, my organization part of what we're doing, we have a big space downtown Jerusalem for artists and people who work in startup. It's a kind of very creative community center. And it's very diverse. We have quite a lot of ultra-Orthodox artists that we brought there. And that raises a lot of questions. So a few weeks ago, some of the ultra-Orthodox painters noticed that the secular painters from the studio just next to them have a naked model once a week on Tuesdays. And they said, and they were very polite, and they came to me and said, listen, we feel uncomfortable that this thing is happening here. And so I went to speak with some people on my staff and the secular painters, and they said, wow, this is art, like we can, this is the end of the country, the minute that we'll start to, and I told them, like, this is an example of something, I'm not saying we need to cancel it, but we need to think about creative solutions to really be in the same building. And to me, it's just an example of the fact that this is how we solve it. If we'll just feel that we need to take care of our own needs, there is no future to Israel. I think that we need to educate the people to think about the other three minorities and to not feel that if you're doing something for the needs of the other tribe, it doesn't mean that your tribe is losing. And I think it's the same in America, the same in the big issues in Israel, and the same with the small issues and people that are engaged in money.
I want to add maybe that I think that we are also still experiencing some of the backlash from the other direction. And I'm not an Israeli, but I would say that in some ways there's a lot of similarity between the lower income Mizrahi voters who vote for Netanyahu, who vote against their economic interests voting for Netanyahu, with the lower class, lower economic folks in this country who are now supporting Donald Trump. They feel condescended to by the elites, much in the way the Mizrahi community is felt condescended to by the Ashkenazi elite, and so they're willing to vote for somebody like Netanyahu, whose policies sort of run against their own interests in a way economically, but yet somehow it's sort of like a protest vote against this condescension that they have felt. And on the LGBT side, yes, Israel's made progress. In some ways, Israel's actually even ahead of us, like in being able to be in the army, which they had for the last 20 years, and we just got to it a few years ago. But it's also kind of a fragile thing, and it's mostly been about Supreme Court decisions and not legislation from the Knesset. And as the religious sector is growing, both the Haredi and the religious Zionist sector, there are more and more rabbis who are becoming emboldened to say all kinds of awful things in the press and in the media about the LGBT community. And so it also seems like there's some backlash, like the Ashkenazi secular community has sort of forced this LGBT equality view on the society, and people are becoming more emboldened now to speak out against it. So I think there's still some of the backlash from where we were, before we're going to get together with some of the new backlash that you're talking about.
I think that in a point of view of the Ethiopian Israeli, I think our challenge, our fighting is like very basic, for basic rights. Okay, we're not there yet even. To mean that today we are fighting for to get an equal opportunity in Israel. The current public opinion in Israel toward the Ethiopian Israeli that they are under capability to do this job or that job, and they should be the last one in the line to ask to be in this position or that position. And if you are there to shout or to say something, so we will remind you that you are the last on the line. So, and what we are doing what we are trying to do through Olim Beyachad is that we don't need to say things to no one. We are there, as I said before, because it's our country, we should get the same cause like any others in Israel. And we do that in a very smart way, or to bring different communities to sit together, Ethiopian Israelis, and this people, Ashkenazi or Sephardi, whatever, that they are living in the Israeli society, and to be aware each other and to know each other by face to face without any barriers. And then once they know each other, the all barriers are falling.
I have a strange suggestion to you, because I think you're correct. When I think of the LGBT community, it does have connections to all the different core groups, including the American community, obviously. And mainly when the articles are written in the Haaretz, my nephew writes a lot of them,
Okay.
in the New York Times, they're about the LGBT community, about how they're being treated, what's going on, and there was social tension and so forth. But that community, actually one of the few ones that really bridges all the various communities. And for them to maybe even have a conference, talk about what the story would be like in Israel, but not just for them to be safe, but for the communities to be safe, for it be the Ethiopian, or be it the secular or the religious or the Haredi, if he gets something Haredi to come, which would be a great success. For them to actually talk about, because they do it to all the communities, what they're feeling, what the narrative would be like for unified Israel. That'd be fascinating to have that actually happen, and to see the LGBT community not just there for themselves, but there they want to contribute to the next picture of Israel, the 3.0 as you're talking about. Because again, one of the few groups that can really bring all the various sides together and to really visualize what that would be like, not just for themselves, but for the nation.
Absolutely.
That'd be fascinating. No one's done that to my knowledge.
No, and I think that's part of what excites us about the work that we are doing. We'll wrap this up in a moment. I guess I would just say, I'll tell you one story. Several years ago, when I met with the leaders of the Orthodox LGBT groups in Israel, and they said to me, we have to teach our leaders in our community that we are not the other. They said, but we can't stop with that. We have to also teach them that the women in our community are not the other, and that the Palestinians that they think of as the other are not the other. Because if we just do it for ourselves, then we're not doing enough. And so, I was filled with so much hope and promise through that conversation that somehow could Orthodox gay people be the catalyst for some greater change. Because if we're only for ourselves, then that's not enough.
I'll ask my nephew to cover it in the New York Times. You can do it projects like that.
Yeah.
That I guess when you cover, that would be that'd be interesting for everybody to hear.
Yeah. Maybe I could say one word of wrap up, and Barak, if you want to. I want to just sort of tie into what Sigal just said about the work that you're doing now, or bringing different people together. Because I think we talk about our philosophy at the Federation, which is I think that for years most of the programs we were funding were targeted to very specific communities, like early education for Arab children, or helping Ethiopian people write better resumes and and we realized that work is important, but it's not enough because of this segregation. That you could be an Ethiopian person and have the best resume and all the kinds of training, but if the first time that the HR officer in the company if that interview is the first time they're ever meeting an Ethiopian person, then they're not going to get the job. And so we have to work on these other projects that you're talking about somehow breaking down the silos and the barriers, and forcing people to sort of meet and work together with each other, so that it's not the first time that when the Ethiopian person walks into the company for the job, that isn't the first time somebody there is meeting somebody who's Ethiopian. That we have to somehow figure out how to sort of break down these walls if we really are going to create a better Israel.
So to say just one more word, to say thank you to the Federation that support us from the first day of Olim Beyachad, and I think help us to fulfill this mission in the ground in Israel. So this is why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.